Hey guys, and welcome to this edition of Scruff's Garage. Today we're not working on the Corvette. That's still a work in progress. But I got a new tool for the garage. I'm excited to have this. Something I wanted for a long time, and working on the Corvette motor was finally an excuse to get it. So this is the Harbor Freight 20-gallon parts washer. I put it together the other night, but of course I can't leave well enough alone. So I've got a few modifications I wanted to share with you that I plan to do. Well, first and foremost, if you see down there, I've got a Harbor Freight one of the little roller dollies that they sell. They're very inexpensive, but it will allow me to move the parts washer around in the garage if I need to. Of course, once you put 10 or 20 gallons of fluid in this thing, it gets rather heavy. So if you didn't have it on rollers, you probably wouldn't be able to move it, at least not easily. The other thing I plan to do is to add an auxiliary filtration system. And I'll show you how I plan to rig that up. We're going to drill some holes in the side. I've got a remote oil filter mounting base. I got a couple of adapters so I can run my hoses, and I got a nice big CarQuest oil filter that will allow us to filter some of the sediment out of the solvent that I plan to use, and to make the solvent last longer and keep the pump lasting longer as well. So that just kind of gives you an overview of what I plan to do. Let's get into it. Okay, so I want to make sure the stand for the parts washer stays positioned on this dolly. I don't want it to move around, especially once I get weight on it, that sort of thing. So then the question is, well, how do you attach this metal base to the wooden dolly? And there's not a lot of room to mount like a lag bolt or something like that, because the caster is under here, and it's right under the spot where you'd want to put a bolt through. So the solution I came up with, not particularly elegant, but I had just a little block of wood. I drilled a small pallet hole, and then I put a sheetrock screw through it, just long enough that it'd go through this block of wood and into the to the dolly itself, and that locks this in pretty well. And of course, if I ever want to take it out, I just back that screw out, and then I can pick it up. So I'll do one of these on all four corners of the mounting feet, and that should lock the parts washer onto the dolly pretty well. The next thing I'm going to do is add some of this weather stripping. It's a rubber foam weather stripping like you'd get for your home around your windows or something like that. I'm going to run a bead of that around the inside edge of the lid. That way when I close it, it seals off a little better and will help prevent the solvent from evaporating when it's not in use. There we go, and it closes nice and soft. Okay, so I'll just show you part of this step here. So I'm mounting the remote oil filter mounting base. So I just held it up. I kind of got it where I wanted it to be, and then I roughly marked with the magic marker through the holes where each mounting screw needs to go. It's a little tricky because there are kind of ridges here in these mounting legs to give them some rigidity. So the easiest way I found to get the I'm drilling a pallet hole. If you use a spring-loaded center punch, it helps get a little indentation started in the metal, and that gives you a spot for your drill bit to kind of get set. Okay. So honestly, as you can see, I only put in these two mounting screws. This one, if you look dead on, it's hard to get to this one because this part of the where the line comes in kind of blocks this one, but it's not going anywhere. There's very little pressure on this, so I think I'm just going to get by with these two screws over here, but that seems pretty decent mount. Okay, you probably can't see it on camera, but I've marked two spots where I'm going to drill holes for the hoses to come through, so that's my next step. Put a towel over my barb fittings just to make sure there's no shavings to get down in there. Not going to hurt anything, but okay, so I've got everything rigged up. So just to kind of give you a rundown. So this is your pump. It draws in fluid from down here. Normally, this is the spigot. It normally screws in to this fitting here. So instead, we're going to take that line out. It runs, I can spin this around so you can see it. That's the line coming out. It goes to the inlet of the fuel filter. Then it comes out, comes through a 90-degree, and then that becomes your spigot coming out. So this fitting is a 1/4 inch NPT to a 3/8 inch barbed fitting. And we're using 3/8 inch fuel rated hose. So make sure you get the fuel rated, not just like heater hose or vacuum hose. That won't stand up to the solvent. So it's 1/4 inch NPT to a 3/8 inch barbed fitting. The barb goes to the line. This comes down here. This particular oil filter adapter, this is a 1/2 inch NPT. I couldn't find at Lowe's today a 3/8 inch barb to a 1/2 inch NPT. So I had to do an adapter. This is a 3/8 barb to a 3/8 male NPT. Then this is another fitting. It's a 3/8 NPT female to a 1/2 inch NPT male fitting. So I just kind of had to make my own adapter. And so that's how we adapt down from the 3/8 inch line to the 1/2 inch coming in here. And then of course it's the same thing on the outlet side. That comes back up. So again we have a 3/8 inch barb fitting here to a 1/4 inch NPT male. Then this 90-degree fitting, it's 1/4 inch NPT female fittings on both ends of the L fitting. And then it comes through. This spigot has a 1/4 inch NPT male fitting that comes out. That's what would have screwed down into the base of the pump. So there's an O-ring there, and then you can't see it, but there's another O-ring on the other side of this washer, and that actually holds it fairly well. There's a little bit of flex to it. Don't want to get too crazy with it, but I think that should hold it fairly well. I'll keep an eye on it once I've got fluid in there and make sure this fitting doesn't leak. If it does, I may have to do something else. Another thing here, obviously when you drill through the sheet metal for the tank, it's going to be a very sharp edge all the way around. So Harbor Freight sells these rubber grommets that fit in there. You can, if you have a drill bit large enough, I was using one of the stepped bits, and the largest it went to was 7/8, which was just big enough to get that fitting, that grommet fitting in there. But it works out very nicely for this 3/8 inch fuel line to go through there, in order to keep that from rubbing on the sharp edge of the metal tank. So I think that'll work out fairly well. If you're curious, this is a CarQuest Red filter. It's the R85515. This is a very generic filter. It fits all kinds of applications. They're inexpensive. I bought a couple of them just so I have one to change out. We'll see how long the solvent lasts, how quickly it gets dirty. That's going to depend largely on what you're cleaning. But I think that should work out pretty well. So that's just kind of an overview. One thing for kicks and giggles, I had asked my wife to get me some rubber gloves. I don't know if you can see this. So she lovingly came back with the very best rubber gloves that Playtex has to offer. So 2 pairs for any task. So I can wear the purple ones or the blue ones if I'm feeling fancy. But she lovingly bought me some gloves, so I will wear them. And here's the solvent that I plan to use. See if you can see that. This is PSC1000, made by Fram. It's not a water-based solvent, even though that's what this parts washer recommends, a water-based solvent. A lot of guys have left some feedback that they haven't had good success with a water-based. So this is a petroleum-based solvent. The flash point is still fairly high, though. Should be higher than anything I'll have to deal with here in the garage. I think it was 140, 145 degrees flash point, so I don't plan to have anything that hot in there. Tractor Supply is still one of the good places that you can buy dangerous chemicals in bulk. So I've got a couple of these 5-gallon pails. We'll see how well that fills up the tank. They're about $40 or $45 a piece, so not inexpensive, but not horrible if it does a good job. Just wanted to come back and share one other modification I made. Also, well, I went back and put fuel injection style hose clamps on my lines here. Of course, I'd already pushed the hose onto the barb fitting, and you're not going to pull that off backwards. But you can take the screw out of the hose clamp, open it up, and then wrap it around again. And just a tip, when you're trying to get these fuel lines to press over the barb fitting, that's obviously it's kind of tough to do, but if you put just a little bit of Vaseline on the barb, the hose will slide right on there really easy. So that'll save you some grief. The other thing I decided to do, I saw someone else did this on YouTube. This is the filter for the pump. So you got this white filter in the back. I just took a piece of the green Brillo stuff, and I cut it to size, and I zip tied it to the front of this, so it would be an additional strainer. May be able to make that filter last a little longer and keep any chunks out of the pump. So anyway, just one more tip to help keep the solvent clean. Hey guys, okay, so last update, one thing I wanted to add, but I hadn't found a good solution for, was I wanted to change out the drain plug to some type of valve that I could open and close and put a drain hose on. So this drain thread is an M14 by 1.5. But everything you find at Lowe's or Home Depot, most of your big box stores, are going to be MPT type threads, and they aren't going to be that large. I've seen several posts, other YouTube videos where guys use different size reducers, and they necked it down, and then they have, you know, one fitting to another fitting to another fitting, and then it's onto a valve. And you know, each of those brass adapters you buy at Lowe's, they're $3 to $5 a piece, and they add up kind of quickly. And I just didn't like having to reduce it down, you know, to a really small drain. So I got searching around, and I found this on Amazon. It's on eBay as well, but it's an oil drain valve. I just happened to Google search an M14 by 1.5 drain valve. So they sell these as a drain valve for a lot of engines. There's some, I think, some truck applications, a variety. But regardless, it's a spring-loaded handle, and then of course it's got a fitting at this end that you can put a, you know, your fuel hose or whatever on, and you can route it to a bucket. But it's the exact right size thread that you need for the bottom of the parts washer, and it comes with a little nylon washer as well. And pretty simply, and then you could just put a hose on it if you want to drain it back into a bucket or something like that. So I'm pretty happy with this. I think it was like $16 or something like that. It's not cheap, but when you factor in the cost of buying a half dozen different adapters, and then a you know, an open and close valve from Lowe's or Home Depot or something, kind of the same price, and to me this is a little bit cleaner. So I was really happy with this. You can, like I said, you can search an M14 by 1.5 oil drain valve, or a drain valve for an F-106N engine, and I think you'll find the same results for that as well. So I hope you found that useful. Like I said, I think this finishes off the washer tank very nicely. Alright guys, I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Scruff's Garage. I'll be sure to provide some feedback as we go on to let you know how great the parts washer works. Good luck with your project.